And the third angel sounded, and there fell a great star from heaven, burning as it were a lamp. Those words were written nearly 2,000 years ago in the book of Revelation, chapter 8, verse 10. For centuries, theologians have debated what this great star might be. A metaphor? A symbolic vision? A warning about something yet to come? Then 3I/ATLAS appeared, and suddenly biblical scholars aren't the only ones discussing Revelation 8. Astronomers are paying attention too. 3 days ago, a group of researchers noticed something that sent shockwaves through both scientific and religious communities. The trajectory of ATLAS, the mysterious interstellar object currently approaching Earth, aligns with specific details described in Revelation's third trumpet judgment with unsettling precision. This isn't about vague interpretations or stretching prophecy to fit current events. The correlations are specific: timing, appearance, trajectory, and potential effects that match the ancient text in ways that are making even skeptical scientists uncomfortable. Hit that subscribe button right now, because what I'm about to reveal about Atlas's characteristics and how they mirror one of the Bible's most detailed apocalyptic prophecies is going to challenge everything you thought you understood about ancient scripture and modern astronomy. Whether you're a believer, a skeptic, or somewhere in between, the parallels between Atlas and Revelation 8 are impossible to ignore, and they're forcing a question that crosses the line between science and faith. Are we watching a cosmic coincidence or the fulfillment of a 2,000-year-old warning? Before we examine how Atlas matches the prophecy, we need to understand what Revelation 8 actually says, and the description is remarkably specific for a text written 2 millennia ago. The book of Revelation describes 7 angels sounding 7 trumpets, each bringing a different judgment upon earth. The third trumpet is described in verses 10 to 11. And the third angel sounded, and there fell a great star from heaven, burning as it were a lamp, and it fell upon the third part of the rivers and upon the fountains of waters. And the name of the star is called Wormwood, and the third part of the waters became wormwood, and many men died of the waters because they were made bitter. Let's break down the specific details this prophecy provides. First, a great star falls from heaven. Not a small object, but something significant, described as great. In ancient terminology, anything celestial that moved was called a star: comets, asteroids, planets. But the emphasis on great suggests something of substantial size. Second, it's burning as it were a lamp. The object is luminous, glowing, producing visible light. This isn't a dark, dead rock. It's something that burns or shines brightly enough to be seen. Third, it falls specifically on water sources, the third part of the rivers, and upon the fountains of waters. Not a direct earth impact everywhere, but concentrated effects on water systems. Fourth, the waters become wormwood, bitter, poisoned, undrinkable. The contamination kills many men who drink the affected water. This isn't about physical destruction from impact, it's about chemical or biological contamination. Fifth, the object has a name: wormwood. In ancient texts, naming something gives it identity and significance. This isn't a random asteroid, it's a specific celestial object with purpose. For 2,000 years, scholars debated what this could mean. Ancient people had no concept of asteroids, comets, or interstellar objects. They couldn't have understood orbital mechanics or impact physics. Yet this description contains details that sound remarkably like what modern astronomers would observe from a comet or asteroid affecting Earth. Biblical scholars traditionally interpreted this as symbolic, metaphorical judgment rather than literal celestial impact. But as our understanding of cosmic threats has grown, some researchers have begun reconsidering whether this prophecy might describe an actual astronomical event with frightening precision. Now let's examine how 3I/ATLAS aligns with each specific detail from Revelation 8. The correlations are disturbing in their precision. A great star from heaven. Atlas is an interstellar object. It literally came from outside our solar system, from the realm ancient people would call heaven or the celestial sphere. Its estimated size of 800 meters to potentially several kilometers qualifies as great by any standard. This isn't a small meteorite. It's massive. Burning, as it were, a lamp, Atlas exhibits unusual luminosity. As it approaches the Sun, it's developing a visible coma, a glowing envelope of gas and dust that makes it appear to burn or shine. Telescopic observations show Atlas glowing with increasing brightness, exactly like a lamp burning in the darkness of space. But here's what's particularly striking. TLAS's brightness has been increasing in unexpected ways. Most comets follow predictable brightness curves as they approach the Sun. Atlas has shown brightness spikes and fluctuations that suggest internal activity, like something is being heated from within, causing it to glow more intensely than simple solar heating would explain. Fell upon the third part of the rivers and fountains of waters. Atlas's current trajectory, if it continues on collision course as some calculations suggest, would impact in a location that could affect major water systems. Impact modeling shows that depending on impact location, the debris plume and atmospheric contamination could spread across roughly 1/3 of Earth's surface, particularly affecting the northern hemisphere where most major river systems are concentrated. An impact in the Atlantic Ocean, for example, would directly affect water systems in Europe, North Africa, and the Americas, approximately 1/3 of Earth's major freshwater sources. The prophecy's specification of a third part might not be metaphorical, it might be a geographically accurate prediction. The waters became wormwood, and many men died. This is where it gets genuinely frightening. Recent spectroscopic analysis of ATLAS has detected unusual chemical signatures. The object appears to contain high concentrations of certain compounds, specifically cyanide-based molecules and other toxins that would be extremely dangerous if introduced into water systems. If Atlas impacted or broke apart in atmosphere, these compounds would be vaporized and distributed through the atmosphere, eventually precipitating into water sources. The result? Contaminated water supplies affecting millions or billions of people. Exactly what the prophecy describes. The term wormwood refers to a bitter, poisonous plant. The waters don't just become dirty, they become toxic, bitter, deadly to drink. Chemical contamination from a comet carrying cyanide and other toxins would produce exactly this effect. Named wormwood, here's where synchronicity becomes eerie. Atlas was designated 3I/Atlas by Astronomers, a technical classification. But in certain translations and interpretations, the word for wormwood in the original Greek text of Revelation is absinthos, which can also mean undrinkable or poisonous star. The phonetic similarity between Atlas and absinthos has not gone unnoticed by biblical scholars. While this could be pure coincidence, some researchers point out that astronomical designations are often acronyms. ATLAS stands for Asteroid Terrestrial Impact Last Alert System, the survey that discovered it. But the resulting name carries echoes of the ancient prophecy in ways that seem almost deliberately aligned. Biblical prophecy isn't just about what happens, it's about when. And Atlas's timing raises questions that are difficult to dismiss as mere coincidence. Revelation describes a sequence of events, 7 seals, 7 trumpets, 7 bowls, representing progressive judgments. The third trumpet comes after 2 other trumpet judgments have already occurred. Scholars have long debated what these earlier judgments might represent or when they might happen. Some biblical researchers argue we're already witnessing the sequence. They point to increasing global catastrophes, pandemics, natural disasters, geopolitical instability, as potential fulfillments of earlier trumpet judgments. If that interpretation holds, ATLAS arriving now would align with the prophetic timeline. But there's more specific timing evidence that's harder to explain away. The book of Revelation was written approximately 95 AD. For nearly 2,000 years, humanity lacked the technology to even detect an object like Atlas, much less track its approach from interstellar space. Only in the last few decades have we developed telescopes and tracking systems capable of identifying interstellar visitors. Atlas was discovered in 2024, at a point in human history when we're finally technologically advanced enough to see it coming, understand what it is, and potentially attempt to do something about it. That timing is either cosmic coincidence or something more deliberate. Consider the alternative. If Atlas had arrived 100 years ago, we wouldn't have known it existed until impact. If it arrives 100 years from now, we might have technology to easily deflect it. But it's arriving in this narrow window when we can see the threat, understand its implications, recognize the prophetic parallels, but may not have sufficient capability to prevent it. That's the exact scenario Revelation describes. People knowing judgment is coming, understanding what's happening, but being unable to stop it. The timing suggests not randomness, but precision. Additionally, Atlas's discovery and approach have coincided with unprecedented global events, pandemics, economic instability, natural disasters, geopolitical tensions. Biblical scholars note that Revelation describes the trumpet judgments occurring during a period of global upheaval. The correlation between ATLAS's arrival and our current historical moment is unsettling. The scientific community's reaction to the Revelation 8 parallels has been complicated. Most astronomers avoid religious interpretation entirely, dismissing the correlations as coincidence, but some are less certain. Publicly, most space agencies and research institutions maintain that ATLAS is simply an interesting interstellar object with no prophetic significance. They argue that humans are pattern-seeking creatures who find connections in random events and that the Revelation parallels are an example of confirmation bias. One astronomer stated, "If you have a 2,000-year-old text that makes dozens of predictions about celestial events, eventually something in the sky will match some aspect of those predictions. It's statistical inevitability, not divine prophecy." But privately, some researchers admit the specifics are harder to explain away than they'd like. The combination of characteristics, interstellar origin, unusual luminosity, potentially toxic composition, trajectory toward Earth, timing of arrival, creates a profile that matches Revelation 8 with uncomfortable precision. A planetary scientist who requested anonymity explained, "Look, I'm not religious. I don't believe in prophecy, but I also can't ignore that this object exhibits multiple characteristics that align with a specific ancient text describing a star that falls from heaven, glows like a lamp, and poisons water. The odds of all those elements coinciding randomly are, well, they're low enough that it makes me uncomfortable." The discovery of cyanide compounds in ATLAS's composition particularly disturbed some researchers. Cyanide creates a bitter taste and is extremely toxic, exactly what wormwood describes. When spectroscopic analysis revealed these compounds, several scientists privately noted the prophetic parallel before quickly moving on to purely scientific discussion. There's also tension within the astronomical community about how much to say publicly. Some researchers worry that acknowledging the Revelation parallels, even as interesting coincidence, could fuel panic or religious extremism. Others argue that pretending the correlations don't exist undermines scientific credibility when people can observe the patterns themselves. One senior astronomer described the dilemma. "We're trained to follow evidence regardless of implications. The evidence shows Atlas matches multiple specific details of an ancient prophecy. Do we acknowledge that and risk appearing to endorse religious interpretation, or do we ignore it and risk appearing to hide information? Either way, we lose credibility with some audience." While astronomers wrestle with the scientific parallels, theologians and biblical scholars are having their own intense debates about what ATLAS might mean for prophetic interpretation. Conservative biblical scholars see Atlas as potential fulfillment of literal prophecy. They argue that Revelation describes real events, not metaphors, and that Atlas could be the actual wormwood star the prophecy warns about. If so, its arrival signals we're entering the tribulation period described in Revelation, with more judgments to follow. Pastor and prophecy researcher David Jeremiah commented, "For 2,000 years, we've read Revelation 8 and wondered what this great star could be. Now we have an interstellar object with toxic compounds approaching Earth, and we're supposed to believe that's coincidence? At some point, correlation becomes causation. These scholars point to additional prophetic markers they believe are being fulfilled: global instability, increase in natural disasters, technological advancement allowing prophetic interpretation, and humanity's ability to witness global events simultaneously, all conditions Revelation suggests would exist during the end times. More moderate theologians take a cautious approach. They acknowledge the parallels are striking, but warn against assuming Atlas definitively fulfills Revelation 8. Biblical prophecy has been wrongly fulfilled countless times throughout history, they note, and premature declarations undermine legitimate theological study. A seminary professor explained, "The correlations deserve serious consideration, but we must be careful. People have been identifying the wormwood star for centuries, Halley's Comet, various asteroids, nuclear weapons. Each time believers declared the end times had arrived. Each time they were wrong. We should observe, analyze, and remain humble about our interpretations." Liberal theologians generally interpret Revelation as symbolic rather than predictive, a first-century document using apocalyptic imagery to encourage persecuted Christians, not a literal prediction of future events. From this perspective, Atlas doesn't fulfill Revelation 8 because Revelation 8 was never meant to be fulfilled. It's metaphorical. However, even some liberal scholars admit the Atlas parallels are remarkably specific and difficult to dismiss entirely as coincidence, even if they don't believe in literal prophetic fulfillment. Jewish scholars offer another perspective. Some note that apocalyptic literature appears in Hebrew texts predating Revelation, describing celestial judgments involving stars falling from heaven and contaminating Earth. Atlas could relate to those ancient Jewish visions rather than specifically Christian prophecy. Perhaps most interesting are the responses from religious leaders who blend theological and scientific understanding. They see Atlas not as divine magic violating natural law, but as God working through natural processes, an interstellar object with specific composition and trajectory that arrives at a specific time, fulfilling ancient prophecy through astronomical mechanics rather than supernatural intervention. This view suggests prophecy isn't about God breaking physics. It's about God knowing physics billions of years in advance and arranging circumstances so natural events occur exactly when and how prophesied. Let's examine what would actually happen if Atlas fulfills the Revelation 8 prophecy. What does "the waters became wormwood" mean in practical scientific terms? If Atlas impacted Earth or broke apart in the atmosphere, the toxic compounds detected in its composition would be vaporized and distributed globally through atmospheric circulation. These compounds, particularly cyanide-based molecules, would eventually precipitate into water sources. A toxicologist ran calculations based on Atlas's estimated composition and mass. If an 800-meter object containing even modest concentrations of cyanide compounds broke apart in atmosphere, the resulting contamination could affect water systems across millions of square kilometers. Cyanide concentrations sufficient to cause illness or death could appear in rivers, lakes, and groundwater throughout entire continents. The symptoms of cyanide poisoning include bitter taste, nausea, respiratory distress, and death in sufficient concentrations, exactly what "many men died of the waters because they were made bitter" describes. The prophecy isn't metaphorical. It's a clinically accurate description of mass cyanide poisoning, but the effects wouldn't be immediate or universal. Impact modeling suggests contamination would spread progressively over weeks or months. Initial impact zones would experience immediate severe contamination. Surrounding regions would see gradually increasing contamination as atmospheric particles precipitated into water systems. Distant regions might experience minimal or no effects. This matches Revelation's specification of the third part being affected. Not everywhere. Roughly 1/3 of water systems concentrated in the impact hemisphere. Global circulation patterns could spread lighter contamination further, but severe effects would be regionally concentrated. Agricultural impacts would be devastating. Crops irrigated with contaminated water would absorb toxins. Livestock drinking contaminated water would die or become unsafe for consumption. The food chain disruption would affect far more people than direct water contamination. A disaster preparedness expert described the cascading effects. You're not just looking at poisoned drinking water, you're looking at agricultural collapse, livestock death, industrial water system failures, and refugee populations fleeing contaminated zones toward regions with safe water. The societal breakdown would be catastrophic, potentially killing more people through secondary effects than primary contamination. This explains why Revelation says, "Many men died," not just from drinking poisoned water directly, but from the complete breakdown of water-dependent civilization across affected regions. Modern water treatment could theoretically remove some contaminants, but not at the scale needed. Municipal treatment facilities designed for bacterial purification aren't equipped to handle chemical toxins at the concentration an ATLAS impact would produce. Even advanced filtration would be overwhelmed. The only effective response would be massive emergency water distribution from unaffected regions, a logistical challenge potentially beyond our current capabilities if 1/3 of Earth's water systems were simultaneously compromised. So here's where we are. An interstellar object matching multiple specific characteristics from a 2,000-year-old prophecy is approaching Earth. In approximately 27 days, we'll know whether it passes safely, impacts, or does something unexpected. Whether you interpret Atlas through faith, science, or skepticism, the objective facts remain. It came from beyond our solar system, literally from heaven in ancient terminology. It exhibits unusual luminosity, burning like a lamp. It contains toxic compounds that could poison water systems, making waters bitter and deadly. Its potential impact zone would affect roughly 1/3 of major water systems, and it's arriving during unprecedented global upheaval. For believers, this is a moment requiring both faith and wisdom. If Atlas is prophetic fulfillment, spiritual readiness matters more than physical preparation. If it's coincidence, faith tested by uncertainty reveals what we truly believe. For skeptics, this is a fascinating case study in how humans interpret uncertain events through existing frameworks. The correlations are striking enough to be interesting regardless of prophetic validity. For scientists, ATLAS is an opportunity to study an interstellar object up close while navigating complex questions about how to communicate risk when religious interpretation complicates public response. For all of us, Atlas poses fundamental questions. Do we live in a universe where prophecy is possible? Can ancient texts contain genuine knowledge about future events? Or are we pattern-seeking creatures finding meaning in cosmic coincidence? In 27 days, Atlas reaches closest approach. We'll know whether it passes safely or fulfills the darkest interpretation of Revelation 8. We'll know whether this was warning or coincidence. Until then, we watch, we prepare, and we each decide what Atlas means through our own framework of understanding. What do you think? Is Atlas the fulfillment of Revelation 8 or remarkable coincidence? Should we prepare for prophetic judgment or simply interesting astronomy? Drop your thoughts below. Subscribe now, because in 27 days we'll have answers that could change how we understand both ancient prophecy and modern science. The great star approaches, the prophecy waits. 27 days until we know the truth.